What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of Hood Tales, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. It's free. It helps get the video out there. Definitely watch this video to the end so you can hear the full story and all the details in the case. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you're feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. For a lot of boys and young men, it's no stronger bond or love than the love they have for their mother. Even if your father's around, it's nothing like a mother's love. Hugs, compassion, that soft touch. Even when you are wrong, Mom Dukes will have your back. Some say a daughter's father is her first love, and vice versa with boys and their mother. As we grow from boys to young men though, it's important for us to learn how to stand on our own, navigate life without our parents. And if you do have a single mother, you have to learn on the baby boy tip. Moms have to have a life too. I know for a fact, for a lot of young men, when men do come around into the picture that's not their father, they can be standoffish while mom is dating, just looking for love. Most sons feel like, who is yo and what is he doing in our house? Even if it's somebody we know. Even though boundaries should definitely be established and kids have to know who is the child and who is the adult, around about those 10 years, when a young man is growing into himself, that protective nature kicks in. They could feel like they are the man of the house and become territorial. No kid wants to be in a position of feeling like things are changing at home, or some don't want a step parent or new face around. But what happens when a child crosses the line, getting grown up business, and makes a life-changing decision? And on this episode of Hood Tales, we'll be taking it to Jackson, Mississippi to discuss the case of a teen who found messages in his mother's phone and chose revenge. Back in 2022, 49-year-old Jimmy Lee Pierce was living a fulfilled life in his hometown of Jackson, Mississippi. The man who was described as having a big personality that made everybody want to be around him and gravitate to Jimmy. He had a lot of friends through the city and knew pretty much everybody. Big on family and being a father, he spent a lot of time with loved ones or talking on the phone, just chopping it up with his adult daughter. Whether they was laughing or joking or fussing about something she did. Even though a little older, Jimmy wasn't no slouch with the woman in the area. He would date from time to time, and around about that time, he found himself feeling a lady who we will call Tracy for the sake of the story. The two was just kicking it at first, but the relationship soon went to another level. Tracy and Jimmy would make it official. She had a son, at the time, 15-year-old LaAndrew Williams. Jimmy and the young man were cordial. He knew that's who his mother was saying and tried his best to accept it. LaAndrew and Tracy were close. It's not clear if she had other kids or not, but he was super protective of his mother. One day in May 2022, LaAndrew was at home. For whatever reason, he had his mother's cell phone. After running across some messages between her and Jimmy, the young man became furious. The messages were explicit, grown up in nature, with the two adults talking how two consensual adults do. But LaAndrew wasn't feeling it. Feeling like Jimmy was disrespecting his mother, he wanted to do something about it. He called his older cousin, at the time 19-year-old Corey Hodge, and told him the situation. LaAndrew let it be known he wanted revenge and wanted to do something so Jimmy could understand not to disrespect him or his mother. The two came up with a plan to just rob Jimmy. LaAndrew knew exactly where he lived, and Jimmy will often be outside in his complex talking to friends. On the day of May 16th, 2022, LaAndrew and Corey put the plan in motion. They pulled up to the Northwest Plaza Apartments in Jackson, where Jimmy lived at. The man was outside just talking, chopping it up with a friend, when two men approached with guns and told him kick everything out. Jimmy put his hands up and told them he didn't have anything, but one of the robbers wasn't trying to hide. and seconds later, multiple shots went off. Witnesses called local police, who responded to the complex to find Jimmy suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, and unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. As an investigation started, people in the apartments stated it was a robbery gone wrong. City cameras caught pictures of one of the suspects in a getaway vehicle. The pictures was released to the news. A family member of LeAndrew and Corey noticed the clothes and getaway car. He went to both of the young men and their uncle, 24-year-old Bonnie Fields, who helped them get away, and told all three they better turn themselves in. And surprisingly, they agreed. The family member, who was also Bonnie's father, drove all three of the men down to the police station, where they confessed to their roles in the homicide of Jimmy. Police found out the motive was all because LeAndrew was mad about the messages and Jimmy dating his mother. It was supposed to be a robbery to scare the man, but witnesses claimed LeAndrew shot Jimmy twice in the chest. With that information, him and Corey were both charged with armed robbery and capital hit. Bonnie was charged with accessory after the fact. At their first court dates, both Jimmy's family and LeAndrew's showed up. As one family was grieving, the other family was showing remorse and compassion for what their loved ones did to Jimmy. Jimmy's sister spoke out on him not making it to his 50th birthday, all over something senseless. His daughter was hurt and expressed she would never be able to talk to her father again. Bonnie's father, and the one who turned the three young men in, wanted it to be known what they did was wrong, and the family didn't condone in them taking an innocent man's life. In a show of forgiveness and faith, both families prayed together at the courthouse. A vigil was held days later for Jimmy, with everyone showing love. Some were hurt, others were angry. The kind man who wasn't in the streets at all, who would give a stranger the shirt off his back, life was cut short over what they described was nonsense. As LeAndrew, who was pointed to as the shooter and mastermind, faced the judge, a deal was offered to the young man. If he pleaded out to the lesser charge of first-degree hit, he would avoid the capital hit charge, which in Mississippi carries execution. The young man did plead out, and at just 19 years old, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. It's not clear if Corey or Bonnie ever received any time for their roles in the situation. But rest in peace to Jimmy. I send my prayers and condolences to his family. This story is crazy and different from most stories I cover. Usually, a boyfriend or girlfriend snaps after finding messages in their significant other's phone from the opposite sex. But this was a son just 15 years old. I don't know if LeAndrew was just that attached to his mother, he didn't want her to date, or what. But he was old enough to understand Mom Dukes was grown. I'm sure Jimmy wasn't her first friend, and at 15, he definitely shouldn't have been going through his mother's phone. But I'm gonna end this one with a question. For all my parents out there, if you are not married or in a relationship with your child's other parent, how do you handle your private life? Like dating, do you introduce your kids to your significant other? Do you explain to them you have a life as well, or keep it private away from them? Let me know how do you navigate that, and also what you think about this situation in the comments. And remember, we gotta succeed not to fail, so we won't be just another hood tale. Yeah, man, this is a super crazy story. Rest in peace, that man. I definitely send my prayers to his family. But I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. Y'all let me know y'all thoughts in the comments. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. This is another episode of Hood Tales. Y'all already know it's all love, fam. It's your boy Tony 2 times. What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of Hood Tales, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. It's free. It helps us get the video out there. Definitely watch this video to the end so you can hear the full story and all the details in the case. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, Feel free to share the channel with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. If you talk to some old heads, a lot of them will say things changed from back in the day when they were younger. The way the world is, the way men and women carry themselves, they talk about a sense of community back in the day. You could discipline somebody else's child if they were doing wrong. You could call out a person if you felt they wronged you or somebody in the community. And the main thing they speak on is how back then, even if it was beef between men and it went to a certain point, women and kids were off limits. If you hurt either or, then you will be dealt with accordingly. But we are far removed from that time. And if you come from a certain environment, it's a universal law to mind your business. And the saying, if it don't apply, then let it fly. Meaning, if it's not you or your peoples, leave the situation alone. In some places, people could see a child getting hands put on them in a way that's far from just simple discipline, or a man putting hands on a woman. And a person who sees that will keep bopping like nothing ever happened. It's not because they don't care, it's because we live in a world where stepping in and being a good Samaritan or hero can get you hurt. It's been a debate online for years now, with women feeling like men don't protect them no more, and men defending themselves by saying because some women carry themselves in a certain way, whether being disrespectful, jumping in a man's face, or saying something slick out their mouth. They feel like if they see a man yoking up a woman, then they probably bought it on themselves. But some are still old school and go by that old law that no matter what, a man should never cross that line with a woman. But nowadays, unfortunately, just trying to help a person can cost you everything. And on this episode of Hood Tales, we'll be taking it right outside of Fort Lauderdale to Lauderdale Lakes, Florida, to discuss the case of a man who tried to help a woman in Walmart and it cost him his life. Back in 2023, 41-year-old Thierry Bastin was living a happy and fulfilled life in the Sunshine State of Florida. Originally from the Big Apple, New York City, Thierry had relocated to Florida back in 2016 to be closer to family. Described as outgoing, a happy man who always had a smile on his face, who loved to be around family. Stated to have the kind of energy people gravitated to, and Thierry was a protector. He would help anybody in trouble. More importantly, he was a father to a daughter back in New York and a 4-month-old son him and his girlfriend shared together. Excited to have a junior, he doted on his son and was looking forward to the future with his girlfriend, Makia. Outside of family, Thierry loved music and entertainment and even had started a record label, hoping one day to make a lifelong dream come true by joining the Navy. All he had to do was get a face tattoo removed, in which he was working on it. When not kicking it with his family, showing off his cooking skills in the kitchen, Thierry, or T, as he was called by friends and loved ones, was probably somewhere trying to help a person in need. As it was stated, the man had a big heart and didn't want to see anybody hurting or struggling. It seemed his life was set. He found his purpose within himself and his family. T had the kind of life most men dreamed of. But on a spring day in 2023, everything would change. On May 2nd of that year, Thierry, his girlfriend, and their baby boy was running some errands. They headed to a local Walmart in Lauderdale Lakes. The plan was just to grab a few items and go on with the rest of their day. While in the store, a man walked in fast. It seemed he was on a mission. At the time, 22-year-old Tyrone Sterling. But Tyrone wasn't just a regular customer though. He was an employee at the store and was coming to confront a young lady who also worked at the store, who we will call Stacy for the sake of the story. Some say Tyrone and Stacy were in a relationship or dating, but this day it wasn't love in the air, but anger. Tyrone approached the young lady aggressively and told her, like, yo, let me see your phone. When she asked why, he grabbed her up in an attempt to grab it and told Stacy, show him her text messages right now. There he saw the drama unfolding and told his girlfriend he wanted to go help, but he didn't know if the guy speaking in reference to Tyrone had a gun on him or not. His girlfriend, Micaiah, who was holding their son, begged him not to walk over. Instead, the couple yelled out for help, thinking Walmart security would come over. But as Tyrone started putting hands on Stacy and it got worse, Theory couldn't just sit back and watch. Help wasn't coming, so he stepped into the situation. As Tyrone turned his attention to Theory, the two men started tussling, and Stacy started running away. Somewhere in the mix, Tyrone upped the gun. Micaiah begged the man and stated, "Please don't shoot. I have his son right here in my hands." Before seconds later, multiple shots went off, and people started fleeing the store. Local police were called to at first what was a call of an active shooter. They responded to the scene to find Theory suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, and unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. As witnesses gave their accounts of what happened and a description of the shooter, managers gave police a name and address, and not long after, Tyrone was caught in a nearby apartment complex. He tried to run, but he was quickly taken into custody, charged with attempted robbery and first-degree hit. But for Theory's family, the damage was already done, and unfortunately, his act of kindness turned fatal. Witnesses were stunned. A man had lost his life in Walmart for simply trying to help a young lady. But Micaiah was devastated. She lost her child's father right in front of her and their child. She spoke out about the pain and anger she felt, stating she looked Tyrone right in his eyes, begged him not to shoot, but he did. She also spoke out about Theory's reservations of going to help the young lady, but being the type of man he was, he couldn't just sit back and watch another man assault a woman. She felt anger. His son, who he loved so much, would never see his father again. At Tyrone's first court date, he showed no remorse. He sat with no emotions while listening to the charges against him. Theory's family questioned Walmart, its policies on safety and security, and were frustrated. An employee was able to assault another employee for minutes without no one intervening, causing Theory to try to stop it, and his act of bravery cost him his life. They filed a lawsuit. As of now, Tyrone is still awaiting his day in court, and the case hasn't made its way to trial yet. Rest in peace to Theory. I send my prayers and condolences to his girlfriend who had to witness that, and his kids who have to grow up without their father. This is the kind of situation people talk about. A man who in some eyes did the right thing by helping a stranger who was getting hurt. But with that, he sacrificed his own life. And now his family has to suffer. Tyrone crashed all the way out. But he is the kind of dude that the old heads don't mention. That's why things changed. And most people choose to mind their business. Because nowadays, dudes will do 100 years over a woman or you getting in their way. Some men are emotional and act off impulse. And instead of you making it home to your girl and son, now your family has to be the ones hurting. But I'm going to end this one with a few questions. For my ladies and fellas. First, for my fellas out there, what would you do in a situation like this? You see a man putting his hands on a woman in front of you. Help or keep it moving. And for my ladies, if this was your man, even if you feel men don't protect women no more, would you let him approach a situation like that, knowing you have a family that depends on him being here? Let me know your answers and your thoughts about the situation in the comments. And remember, we gotta succeed, not to fail, so we won't be just another hood tale. Yeah, man, it's a terrible story. Rest in peace, that man. I definitely send my prayers to his family. But y'all don't be shy in the comments. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the situation. I definitely appreciate you if you made it to the end. Y'all already know it's all love, fam. It's another episode of Hood Tales. It's your boy Tony 2 times.
Wed and her father, who are now in critical condition after they were both shot in Southwest Philadelphia.
A shooting which wounded a pregnant bride on her wedding day and left her father fighting for his life. Police say the car is registered to the groom's former wife.
It's your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times, and I'm back with another video. In this episode of Hood Tales, let's take it to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to tell the story of a woman who ambushed her ex-husband's new bride on their wedding day. But before we get into this video, don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. Turn your notifications on so you don't miss any future uploads. Stay tuned until the end to hear the whole story. Everything in this video is alleged. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Yasmin Wilkerson was known as a woman who wore many identities at once: wife, mother, and someone who demanded to be heard. Those who knew Yasmin described her as outspoken, deeply emotional, and fearlessly territorial over the life she believed she had built. Yasmin wasn't someone who lived in the shadows. She was deeply tied to her family, specifically her aunt, and had spent years building a life with her husband, Thomas. Yasmin could be seen as protective, perhaps to a fault. She was the kind of person who didn't let a perceived slight slide. In her world, respect wasn't just a courtesy, it was required. But beneath that exterior was a woman grappling with the painful reality of a dissolving marriage. But it seemed Yasmin wasn't ready to let her husband walk away. She was not someone who handled betrayal quietly. When she felt wronged, she confronted it head on, often publicly and without hesitation. To Yasmin, loyalty wasn't optional, it was everything. By 2018, her marriage to Thomas had unraveled. The separation wasn't just painful, it was humiliating in her eyes. What made it worse was that Thomas didn't simply leave. He moved on quickly, openly, and with someone who would soon become the center of Yasmin's anger. That woman was Bibi Waring. Bibi was 23 years old in the spring of 2018. She was pregnant with twins, close to her family, and living with her father, Frederick Waring, in Southwest Philadelphia. Bibi was described as expressive, proud, and unafraid to show her happiness. She shared milestones online, celebrated loudly, and believed she had found stability with Thomas Wilkerson, the same man Yasmin once called her husband. To Bibi, the relationship was new, hopeful, and sacred. She was focused on her health, her upcoming family, and the man she believed was her soulmate. For Bibi, the past was the past, and she was ready to celebrate her new union under the traditions of her faith. To Yasmin, it was a betrayal that felt personal and unforgivable. As these two women entered into each other's orbit, the bridge between them was, of course, Thomas. He was the common denominator, the man Yasmin was losing and the man Bibi was gaining. You had one woman feeling replaced and another feeling like the victor in a battle for a man's heart. They knew of each other through the grapevine of the city and, not surprisingly, through social media. It was a classic recipe for friction, but nobody expected it to ignite quite like this. By May 2018, tensions had been simmering for months. Then came the wedding. On Sunday, May 19, 2018, Bibi married Thomas Wilkerson in an Islamic ceremony at a Philadelphia mosque. It was a joyful day, family, tradition, and celebration. Glowing with the joy of a new bride, Bibi posted a photo with the caption, "Just married," to her Facebook page. Family, friends, and followers reacted instantly. But one comment cut through the special moment. It was Yasmin's. Yasmin responded with a message that appeared calm on the surface, but carried emotional weight beneath it. She wrote, "He deserves you. You deserve him. Take care of my kid." On the surface, the comment might have looked like a goodbye and good luck, but in the context of their history, it was a stinging jab. The comment section became a battlefield. Friends and family members from both sides jumped in, throwing verbal blows. By the following afternoon, the digital altercation turned into a real-world challenge. Insults regarding Yasmin's aunt were said, and Yasmin felt that a line was crossed and it was disrespectful. With her family's honor at stake, Yasmin texted Bibi's sisters and invited them to find her. A meetup for a physical altercation was now on the table. Later that night, between 9 and 10 p.m., the tension moved from the screen to the streets. Yasmin arrived first at 58th and Hatfield Streets, where Bibi lived with her father. She did not come alone. She was backed by a crowd of 15 to 20 women. Eyewitnesses described a terrifying scene. Some women were reportedly carrying sticks embedded with nails. When Bibi arrived at her father's house, she was met by this wall of hostility. Bibi, her sister, and her niece stood their ground. Words were exchanged and emotions were high. But then something unexpected happened. The crowd began to disperse. No physical confrontation occurred. It appeared the situation was ending without further incident. Then Yasmin turned back. She claimed she was looking for her keys, but the piece was a facade. When Yasmin doubled back, the energy changed. She wasn't just with a group of women anymore. She was accompanied by two men. As Bibi stood outside her father's home, upset and feeling disrespected, her 74-year-old father, Frederick Waring, repeatedly stepped between her and Yasmin, physically holding her back, trying to prevent anything from escalating. Bibi later claimed she was unarmed. She did not see Yasmin holding anything either. Then, in a matter of seconds, Bibi heard Yasmin turn toward two men and say words that would change everything. As Yasmin looked at the two men with her, she gave a chilling command. End them both. Moments later, several shots shattered the night. Frederick Waring reacted instantly, shielding his pregnant daughter by pulling her to the ground, placing his body over hers. The scene was absolute chaos. Bibi would later realize she couldn't stand up. She had been struck multiple times, but her father had taken the worst of it. Frederick was struck 10 times in his torso and upper body. Bibi was struck 4 times in her hip and leg. The sidewalk outside their home became a horrifying scene of fear and disbelief. The assailants vanished into the night. Emergency responders rushed both victims to Penn Presbyterian Medical Center. Frederick Waring underwent surgery and spent 8 days in a coma. Frederick eventually woke up, a hero in every sense of the word. He remained in the hospital for nearly a month. Bibi spent 10 days recovering. Her unborn twins miraculously survived the ordeal. During the investigation, investigators later recovered shell casings of 3 different calibers from the street, evidence suggesting more than one shooter. The suspects fled in 2 vehicles. One was later found abandoned nearby. The other was never recovered. Days later, Yasmin eventually surrendered and turned herself in as the investigation narrowed in on her and her vehicle. She was charged with multiple serious offenses, included attempted hit, aggravated assault, conspiracy, and related counts tied to both Bibi and Frederick Waring. She maintained that she never physically touched Bibi and claimed she did not carry a weapon. Prosecutors argued that her words and actions set everything in motion. Yasmin's first trial in 2019 ended without a verdict. The jury could not agree. Yasmin chose to waive her right to a second jury trial, opting instead for a bench trial in June 2022. The judge examined the case, and this time the court found her guilty. Yasmin was convicted of attempted life-ending actions and aggravated assault. In September 2022, Yasmin was sentenced to 5 to 10 years of incarceration, followed by 4 years of probation. The sentences for both victims were ordered to run concurrently. Yasmin appealed. In late 2024, the judgment of the sentence was vacated due to a sentencing error, and the case was sent back for resentencing. Yasmin was later resentenced accordingly. Today, the 33-year-old is currently incarcerated at State Correctional Institution Muncie, serving her time. As for the men who allegedly pulled the trigger, there's no public information on whether they were ever arrested or charged. This story shows how quickly emotions can override judgment, how pride, jealousy, and unresolved resentment can spiral into a lifetime of regret and emotional pain. A Facebook post became a trigger. A wedding celebration became a night of lifelong consequences, and a father's instinct to protect his child turned him into a living shield. If not for her father, BB could have lost not just her life, but her children. Social media didn't create the anger, but it accelerated it, and the anger continued to grow unchecked. What might once have cooled over time instead escalated in minutes. Thankfully, no one lost their lives as a result of this, but in the end, no one walked away unchanged. Was the respect both sides sought out worth the consequences? Was the reaction worth prison time or the scars a father and daughter will carry forever? Let me know your thoughts on this in the comments. Alright fam, that's it for this episode of Hood Tales. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, consider liking and sharing. Subscribe for more stories like this and for the stories behind the headlines, because behind them all, our lives forever changed. This is your girl, Mrs. Tony 2 times. Until next time.
What's going on, YouTube, fam? It's your boy Tony 2 times, and we back with another episode of Hood Tales, man. Before I start, be sure to tap that like button. Definitely watch this video to the end to hear the full story and all the details in the case. It's a lot of twists and turns in this one, so keep up with me. For my day one fam, y'all already know it's all love. Thanks for tuning back into another episode. If you're new to the channel and you feeling the content, feel free to subscribe. Definitely hit that notification bell so you can be notified every time we drop a new video. Oh yeah, feel free to share the channel and the content with your peoples. Everybody is welcome. With that being said, let's get right into the story. When most people decide they want to jump into the streets, more than likely it's to make some fast money. Depending what part of the world you live in and how your city operates, it's multiple ways to make a few dollars. Of course, you have the trappers, individuals that know how to get their hands on product, take it to the block, and feed the streets, because it's all about supply and demand. And that's how they eat. Or the scammers. They make their bread finessing, getting over, whether it's on a person, cracking cards, or finding loopholes in the system. Where I'm from, you even got hitmen or paid shooters. They don't even have to know their target. If a person drops a bag, they will hunt until the job is done, because for them, it's all business, not personal. But it's all a food chain, because you also have the robbers or stick-up kids. They wait in the cut, watch everybody else make money however they choose to get it, and they come and take it. Some consider that being the lowest form in the streets. They might even consider them cruddy or thieves. But it's always been every man for themselves. In the jungle with all type of predators to eat, some feel like they gotta become a lion. But when you choose to live a street life, nobody is above the food chain, and even hunters can become prey. And on this episode of Hood Tales, we'll be taking it to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to discuss the case of a stick-up crew who hit all the plugs in their city before they backdoored one of their own. All the way back in 2015, 34-year-old Herman Highshaw, 22-year-old Akeem Williams, 29-year-old Shondell Joshua, and the youngest member of the crew, 18-year-old Demarion Allen, was all trying to navigate the streets of Milwaukee. Most of the men had knew each other for years and had one goal in common: to get some money. Already in the mix, knowing all the hustlers and big dope boys in the city, their way of getting some bread was robbing. They would keep their ears to the streets, find out who had what and how they were moving, and try to catch them slipping. And on December 3rd, 2015, it was business as usual for the crew. A 28-year-old man named Demetrius Baker, nicknamed Michi, name had came across their desk. Michi and his crew had a mobile trap operation where they never used houses so they could stay on the move. They hustled from their cars. In the early morning hours, around 12 a.m., Michi was in a car with one of his homies. When out of nowhere, the car was ambushed with multiple men telling them to kick everything out. Seconds later, over 19 shots went off. Police was called to the scene on North 6th Street by Meineke Avenue, where they found Michi laying in the street, suffering from 7 gunshot wounds, and unfortunately, he was pronounced gone on the scene. A witness who called police and placed garbage cans all around Michi's body so he wouldn't get ran over told police a car pulled up, some men started yanking on the car door, smacked the man who was with Michi with a gun, and he jumped out and ran for help, but he was hit too. Fortunately, he survived his injuries. He was able to tell police it was a robbery, and the men took 33 grams of smack, $2,200, some Cartier glasses, a Pelly Pale coat, and 4 cell phones from Michi. After they shot him, they then threw him out the vehicle and stole the car. Police found the car later on that day in another part of the city. As the community and people who loved Michi was left to grieve, a confidential informant told police they knew exactly who did it because 3 men were bragging about the hit. They stated they caught Michi slipping. One of the men stated he reached for something, so they shot him. They told police the men were Akeem, Shondell, and Demarion. Police took the information, but held it while they tried to build a case. Months would go by, and the crew was still on the move. On May 14th, 2016, Akeem, Shondell, and Demarion started off the day together. They were lurking as usual when they saw a man parked at a corner store near 39th and Capitol. They parked the car, and all 3 walked up to the victim. They tugged on his car door and realized it was open. Then they hopped in, guns in hand, and told the man they knew he was trapping. They knew he had money and take him to the house. The man did what he was told. He took them to his apartment, walked in, and at first gave them $300 until one of them got aggressive, started yoking him up and asking him, like, you want to lose your life over this bread? Eventually, the man complied and gave them $5,000 in cash. Fortunately for him, no shots had been let off. The victim told police he was kidnapped and robbed. He gave them surveillance footage from his place. Police felt it was a similar situation to the Michi hit, but they wouldn't have too much time to think about it. The same day, just 2 hours later, the crew had picked up its 4th member and the oldest, Herman, and they were still out lurking. When on North Richard Street, Herman pointed to a man and said he getting money, and I know he's sweet or easy lick. The crew came up with a plan. Herman and Demarion were parked. Akeem and Shondell will run down on the man they were plotting on. He was at the time 29-year-old Landry Harris. Landry bopped from the corner to a car on the block, not knowing he was being stalked. He got in the passenger side when 2 men approached the vehicle. They stated, "Give us everything," before shots went off. The driver tried to reverse but hit a tree. Police was called to the location to find Landry suffering from multiple gunshot wounds, and unfortunately, he wouldn't survive his injuries. Police were now hot on the crew's heels after another informant told them the crew had been responsible for multiple robberies and hits. But before they got a chance to move in, things would take another turn. Later on in May, the youngest of the crew, 18-year-old Demarion, got a call from Herman, who he had knew since he was a kid and had been on many licks with. Herman even was tight with the young man's family, so he thought nothing of it when he told him, like, "Shorty, pull up. I want to holler at you real quick." On May 27th, 2016, Milwaukee police and firefighters got a call of a fire that seemed unusual. They responded to the scene. They were surprised to find a partially burnt body laying on top of a recycling bin, wrapped up in white sheets. It seemed the person was shot in the head. They were pronounced gone on the scene, and later on, unfortunately, they were identified as Demarion. Once again, police got information from another informant, stating Herman decided Demarion was a liability. He thought the youngest he could break easy and talk to police, so he called them over to his house to the basement and shot the young man. He then got an associate to take him to the store to get cleaning supplies and help him move the body. 2 days later, he moved out the home. Police were able to verify the story by getting surveillance footage from the store the informant stated Herman went to, and in fact, it showed Herman buying the products. Also, the video from the day of the kidnapping showed Demarion, Akeem, and Shondell at the victim's apartment demanding money. The same clothes they were wearing that day were described by witnesses 2 hours later on the scene on the hit on Landry. Police also had been getting more information, with people pointing to the crew stating they took Michi's life as well. With that, the remaining 3 of the crew were all tracked down, taken into custody, charged with multiple robberies, hits, and attempts. As the case made its way to court, Herman was surprised Shondell was cooperating, talking to detectives and prosecutors. As Demarion's family spoke out, they stated the young man was living fast. He wasn't perfect, he was caught up in the streets, but it didn't give Herman right to play God and take his life. He apologized to the family and stated he made a decision out of fear and emotions. He eventually pleaded guilty to second-degree reckless homicide and was sentenced to 22 years in prison. With his cooperation, Shondell only received 16 years. Akeem got it the worst, and for his role, he was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Rest in peace to Demetrius, Landry, and Demarion. I send my prayers and condolences to their families. It's crazy how Demarion was running with the crew, preying on people, the trappers in the city, not knowing he would eventually be preyed on himself and backdoored by one of his own. Then the person Herman thought would talk to the police, he took his life, not knowing multiple people was already telling on them, and Shondell would be the one to give the most information. It's an old saying, it's no honor amongst thieves, and I think this case proved that. It was every man for himself. I'm sure if they would have never got jammed up and they all would have been free, they would have all been trying to backdoor each other. But I'm going to leave this one open for discussion. Y'all let me know what y'all think about the situation in the comments. And remember, we got to succeed, not to fail, so we won't be just another hood tale. Yeah, man, that's a crazy story. Rest in peace to everybody that lost their life and who was affected by this case. I send my prayers to their family. But I ain't gonna talk too much more about this one. Y'all leave it in the comments. I appreciate you if you made it to the end. This is another episode of Hood Tales. It's your boy Tony 2 times. Love, fam. I'm out.